All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Let's see what we got here. See if we're live. See if we're live.
Is that better?
And we're live. We are
Yeah.
live. Yeah, that's way better. Wow. Is there like a fan on?
I just opened the window.
You're in Arizona, so I guess it makes sense. Well, we're live now, so kind of wait a second and give some folks some time to log on. Definitely looking forward to having this discussion for sure, and grateful for you all coming on tonight. Thankful for those that will watch tonight. Grateful for that. Looking forward to having a good discussion. I feel like there's a a good deal of difference in the way all of us believe. Not one of us has one particular way of believing that is 100% the same, and I think that that's good. One of the goals of tonight is to, one of the things that anybody who follows me or who reads my post knows that I'm really critical of the church for in a lot of ways, very supportive of the church. I'm unapologetically Christian, but really critical of some of the ways of the church. And one of the things that I think is missing is the ability to have these kinds of conversations from different perspectives within the church. And one of the things that I kind of thought is, well, instead of just complaining about it, why don't we do something about it? And so this platform that we have called the Pull Up is just the whole format of the Pull Up is like when you outside and somebody just pulls up to the house. You don't get to dictate what's talked about or how it's talked about. You just pull up and you talk about it. And so I invited a few of my friends. Those of you who may not know me, I'm Jason. I'm kind of like the host of the Pull Up. I am a Christian and community activist, and I believe God has something to say about the state of America in terms of social justice and things like that. Many of you know my good friend Chaz, who a lot of times is a co-host, and he be on some real shenanigans or whatever. And so, no, it's real. It's real. He be on some real shenanigans, and so looking forward to having his contribution. Chaz doesn't go to church. I would imagine kind of a-religious, non-religious. Does that sound like a fair representation of you, Chaz? Why don't you introduce yourself? How about that? Why don't we just do that?
Yes, Jason. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I know you could. I just wanted to say that because everybody does that. Can you hear me? My name is Chaz Hines, San Diego native, born and raised, bona fide, certified, super qualified. I want to make clear that I am tonight non-believer, which is it's not insulting in a sense, but I don't disbelieve per se. I just want to make it clear I'm not an agnostic or any of these these titles. I'm not an atheist. I just don't know, right? I don't believe, nor do I disbelieve.
So that would make you non-atheist, but that would technically make you agnostic. Agnosis means just you don't know. So you technically you would be an agnostic then. Yeah. So welcome to our agnostic friend. You're welcome.
I didn't even know I was. Okay, I'll accept that.
This is a safe space for you, Chaz. We will let you be. You can agnostic all night. You can agnosticate the entire night. It's okay.
Thank you for the freedom.
Your secrets are safe with us, buddy. All right. And next, my good friend John, we go way back. Me and John go way back to some early church days. Definitely seen a ton of difference in the way you think now versus the way you thought before. We've had some really in-depth conversations over the years. Happy to have you here. You want to introduce yourself to the people, John? Last time you saw John, he was our token white guy, and you had to speak for all white people. And so tonight, that is not your job. That is not the goal of tonight, but you will be speaking for liberals. You are going to be sort of like that liberal leaning guy, and that is who you're going to speak for. You represent all of them. No pressure. You want to tell everybody?
That's not entirely fair, though, because I'm not.
No, don't tell me how to do. No.
Okay.
No
I'm sorry.
control in here, John. You're not.
I won't tell you how to do your job. Sorry. What do you want me to say? My name is John.
Just whoever you are. Just a little bit more.
Yeah, Southern California, born and raised. Grew up in the mean streets of Poway, California.
Thug life.
Thug life. Currently live in Serra Mesa. Getting my doctorate right now in contextual theology through Northern Seminary in Chicago.
Chi-Town.
What else do you want me to say? Beautiful wife, 2 kids.
Yeah.
Just say it, John. You're holding down the liberals. If you don't like what John says, you ain't black.
Look, this is my blanket statement. This is my blanket statement. I am nonpartisan. I will never, ever be either Republican, Democrat, or anything. But I do lean socially liberal. That is true.
Okay.
So it's very easy for most conservatives to hate what I say, but there are also things that I believe that most liberals would also find uncomfortable.
Okay, cool.
Good distinction.
Well, good. Welcome, man. Glad to have you, brother. Again, John will be a regular co-host with some ideas we got coming up. Next, I got my good friend Matt Chavez. I've known Matt for golly. Matt was responsible for educating my children for their first years of school. I used to do the chapel services at the Rock Academy regularly. And so me and Matt go way back. Dude, bro, I just thought about it right now. I mean, I think my daughter might have been 5 when I first met her, and she's 20 right now. You know what I mean? So I've known Matt for 15 years. I've known him for 15 years. Always had a lot of love for you. Yeah. And I'll tell you something. What I really love about our relationship is, and we talked about this yesterday, is that we disagree. Like, we're kind of on polar ends of the spectrum as it relates to our political views and the way we view society or whatever, per se. Just on, I mean, we get to see our thoughts, 1 or 2 of all the thoughts, but I appreciate the comments that you make on my post and to show you the love that I have. And to me, I believe integrity is very important, and you've been very integrous. There have been times that you've called me or that you reached out to me and said, hey, I think what you posted is wrong and you shouldn't have that up here. And here's why. And I will look at it and go, you know what? Okay, I respect that. And I'll pull it down. I have done that. And conversely, I have called you, reached out to you and said, hey, I think what you said or whatever here, and I think you should correct that. And you have done that. So I have a ton of respect for you, a lot of love for you. And so welcome. And you want to maybe just give a little intro about who you are.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Much love back to you too.
Yes, sir.
It's definitely mutual. Matt Chavez, I'm the superintendent of Brethren Christian High School for about 1 more day, maybe 2 more days.
Okay.
The school is closing, and so
wow.
so I'm in the process of closing it out, and so just been a believer for I've been a believer for 33 years right now.
Okay.
And, so that's. But my hope tonight is that the Bible says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and for they shall be called sons of God. And so that's my hope that we can be peacemakers tonight.
Yes, sir. Good stuff, man. That is a good goal. Welcome, man. Glad you're here. Last but certainly not least, my main man representing Steel Lamb Bullies. You know what I'm saying? The Steel Lamb, is it Steel Lamb? Is it Foundation or Steel Lamb Productions? Our homeboy Brandon Lamb is a breeder of bullies, some incredibly beautiful puppies. So good job representing B Lamb tonight. Man, me and Angelo go way back like smokestacks. I also know him through church. Yeah, we have a lot of mutual affiliations. We've been in a lot of the same spaces for a long time. He is an elder at the church that my wife and our family's not necessarily members of, but we attend there, or we were attending there before COVID, but our families are extremely close, and I'm glad that you are here tonight, brother. to have this conversation, and do you want to introduce yourself, let people know who you is?
Right on. You pretty much said it, but my name is Angelo. I'm one of the pastors at Catalyst Church. It's the name of the church that I attend out here in Paradise Hills. Yeah, I'm here to bring my perspective. You know what I'm saying? I born in the U.S., raised in the U.S. My parents come from Panama, so I'm Afro-Latino, and I love trying to bring that into the mix, right? So I'm just here to add that piece. That's Mexican. That's okay. That's okay.
Wow, we're off to a great start.
Hey man, hey man,
Here.
hey brethren. All right, how about this? You got dressed, so hey brethren, wagwan.
Wagwan 7 day, brethren. Yeah, man. We're good.
You know what I'm saying? Don't get me started, bro. I know how to switch it up, player. So
Really racist show. Wow, it's amazing. Racial.
Yeah. So if we can, I'd like to start the first question that I would like to just put out here. And basically the goal of tonight is really to we want to have a discussion about God kind of first and foremost, but about some specific things pertaining to God. And so one of the things that we did was we discussed the things that we would talk about. The goal is this is not to try to stomp anybody. We're just all speaking from our own personal perspectives, whatever that looks like. And so the first question that I would like to ask in kind of a two-part way, a two-part question. And Chaz, I think this was your question, was can you be a politician and Christian? And what I would like to, and I don't know if this way encroach into one of our other questions, but I would like to say, can you be involved in politics and be a Christian? Can you, or maybe should you be involved in politics if you're a Christian? And is that a fair way to ask the question, Chaz?
It's like multi-tiered. That's one direction.
Okay. Well, feel free to ask about as we go. So, and what we'll do is just whoever wants to step up and just sort of take the first crack at it. Can you or should you be, if you're a Christian, should you be involved in politics, and can you be a politician? Whoever wants to start.
I think those are two separate questions.
Okay.
Personally. So for the one that's on the screen, can you be a politician and a Christian? To both of those, I would say you wouldn't be a very good one. Right, to follow Jesus and or to be a politician, compromise is inevitable. You are going to have to make certain decisions that, if logically or consistently follow through either which way, you're going to have to make some drastic compromises. Can you be involved in politics? Well, as Americans, we are afforded that privilege, right? We are afforded that right and that privilege to participate. The challenge, though, is, and this is where the two questions sort of intersect, is to what degree? To what degree can we or should we get involved where we can still be both active and good political participants and also committed followers of Jesus? There's a lot more to say about that, but that's kind of how I would quickly respond to that question.
I knew that he would be real. I knew he would answer it with that reality. Let me pose this: 33-year believer, and I don't mean that.
Matt.
No, but I'm specifically saying that
happens to be the age of Jesus. So,
but I'm saying 33-year believer.
Heathen. But hey, what Stephen the Heathen is your name for tonight, right? What you said.
But no, I would ask if you look at, presuming you're older than 33, and to follow with what John just said, the you before and the you after, however you would characterize your belief and whatever that means as far as the way you make decisions, could you be the same decision maker? I have so much I can't really get it out, but I guess my question is there politics in belief, in religion, in Christianity? Is there such a thing as politics? And then if you think about who you were prior to being a believer, how could you, after you became a believer, participate in something that I believe doesn't have politics? And wouldn't you be compromising your beliefs daily?
Well, the answer is, if God calls you to be in politics, we serve God, and so we serve God no matter what. And to John's point, I disagree. I think if a Christian is called into politics, they can do a good job, because not every decision that they make is immoral. Not every decision that they make is unethical. You can make moral and ethical decisions based on biblical teaching, and so it's quite possible to be in politics and be a Christian, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good politician. It also doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good Christian. So I would disagree there. As far as I'm not really sure what the question is as far as decision making before I was a Christian and now. I'm not sure what that has to do with politics, but my decision making is completely different now than it was before I was a Christian. And so, but my decision making is it has to go through the lens of God's word, and so that's how I make decisions now.
So, and if I could, I guess, so to answer more, so it's kind of good. You got two separate opinions. John is saying, well, nah, you can't really. One of the things I don't know if you said this when we were talking yesterday, John, all of us, or maybe, I don't remember when you said it, but at some point we talk about these kinds of things all the time. But one of the things that you talked about is that if you were a Christian in politics, you probably won't make it to a second term. If you were really to do what the scripture says, you probably could get into politics as a Christian, but if you actually pushed your Christian views, there might be a good chance that you would not be reelected to a second term or a follow-up term.
Yeah, well, I should back up a little bit, because there's a key component that I did forget to say. I mean, following Jesus is political. So when we hear the term politician, politics, as Americans, we think within a particular frame, right? We think of bipartisanship, typically, right? Republican, Democrat. We think in terms of local office, right? Whether it be or office in general, whether it be at the local level, national level, et cetera, et cetera. So being a Christian is political. How I'm responding to that, though, is I think how we typically think of it as Americans. And yes, I agree. And yes, Matt and I have sharp disagreement on this, I can already tell. Is that to be thoroughly Christian, to say I follow the words and teachings of Jesus, if you were to adequately do that in our cultural climate, and I'm not even talking about right now, I'm just talking about as an American in general, decisions would have to be made that would automatically counter the teachings of Jesus. And so if you were, so most of you know my views on violence and nonviolence. If you were to be the president of the United States as a Christian, that would require you to drop bombs on foreign countries. That would require you to make militaristic decisions. I'm just looking at one aspect right now, militaristic decisions that I think would counter the teachings of Jesus. And so would I say that God would call somebody to that sort of service? That seems to contradict the teachings of Jesus as how I read them. So that kind of speaks to that. So in that regard, that would obviously upset a lot of Americans, right? Because you would say, well, no, we're not going to get involved in military service, or we're not going to do this. We're not going to make these certain decisions over here. Well, you're going to polarize millions and millions of people. You're not going to be voted back in office. So obviously most politicians don't want that, right? They got a job to do. They represent millions of people. So they have to execute decisions that I think would counter the teachings of Jesus.
Let me ask you, Gilo, how would you respond to like the question and maybe sort of some of what you heard right now? What are your thoughts?
Sure. So first of all, I would say that Christians don't even agree with each other when it comes to the Bible. When it comes to Jesus, there's so many different sects and different beliefs and whatnot that to then say, can you be a politician and a Christian? Well, yes, but what's your definition of a Christian? Or if we're just saying someone who follows Christ's teachings, how do you follow those teachings, right? So I guess my point there is that I feel a Christian can be a politician, but similar to what John said, is that they probably wouldn't be a very effective politician, or not for long. not in the long term. I think of lobbyists and different things that go on in politics from the local levels all the way to the federal level. And are you willing to take money for something, or are you not? And then if you don't, are you willing to suffer the repercussions that come with that, being blackballed or whatever else? Because now you're no longer effective for your constituents, for the people who you are representing. So how do you balance those things? Can it happen? Probably. I think it'd be very difficult. I just think it'd be a very ineffective politician in the long term, based on what I understand and believe a Christian is and how a Christian should act in the political realm.
Jason, if I might, I want to throw out something really quickly. This is something that has always brought me absolute distaste, not to believing in God or religion as a whole, but to the specific notion. Do you guys remember Senator Rob Portman? Anybody familiar with him? He was in the news several years ago. Republican senator on every quote unquote gay issue, gay marriage, don't ask, don't tell, on any one of those issues, absolutely voted party line, right? Against all of them. Basically, typical stereotype kind of guy that was damning your kids to hell if they were gay. His son, and I want to say around about 2013, his young son comes home, comes out of the closet, and says he's gay. Senator Portman has a miraculous about face, an evolution of belief, of stance, and now begins to vote 180 everything he was voting before. And now he's at the pride parade with his son. I have a problem believing in your beliefs, and I don't mean your, but I'm saying in general. I have an issue when you're damning my son to hell. You have no problem doing that, but you don't want to damn your sons to hell. And when you're a politician, when you're a legislator, and you're voting against everybody else's kids' rights, but when your own kid comes home and says he's gay, now all of a sudden you've got this about face. I find it disingenuous and disgusting. And again, I know I'm getting a little worked up, but I never forget that, Senator, because that represents the absolute hypocrisy of it all. It's absolute hypocrisy.
Well, let me do kind of a follow-up to make sure we have clarity on this, because did he represent himself as a Christian?
Absolutely.
Okay. And is that where the hypocrisy was because of that? Is that why
the fact that he was a Christian, the fact that he was a legislator, and the fact that his votes were as such, and then after his son came home and divulged the information he divulged, that he did an about face, but never before would he do an about face for my son or any of your sons.
Yeah. Well, and I think
how do you legislate like that? How was that?
Well, I think, there's something to be said about life in general. Like, right. I mean, let's be honest. How many people truly care about a particular issue more than when it actually affects their home? Like people that their whole life are relatively silent about something. Think about this.
But it's driven by your belief. But if it's driven by your belief, it's not driven by your opinion. It's not driven by your taste. It's driven by your quote unquote belief. But that's what we're talking about here.
Yes, but what I was going to say is that is there's nothing more potent than actual experience. And so my homeboy, rest in peace, August Hunter, used to always say, people are like tea bags. You never know what you get until you put them in hot water. So a lot of people think that they would believe a certain thing or do a certain thing until it hits home. Most people don't care about cancer until their mother or father or somebody they know gets it. Then all of a sudden it becomes a priority in their life. Most people, and that's the reason why a lot of legislators can vote to have wars and stuff like that. If your kids are exempt from going there, you don't have that worry. I mean, so I think that there's
Well, then what am I to think of your belief? Then if you haven't had water poured for you here, there, anywhere, then what am I to think of your quote unquote beliefs? Especially if you're legislating.
Probably
your beliefs are hollow then.
Yeah, that's probably what you should think then. That's probably a fair assumption. What do y'all think? I mean, can you defend that? How do we defend hypocrisy in politicians that say that they're Christian?
John, she's agreeing with me, isn't she? I can tell.
She just whispered in my ear, man. That man is a wise man. There's so many thoughts, because I mean, so much of what Chaz just said, we've heard from pastors, right? We've seen pastors, we've seen biblical scholars do the same thing, theologians. There's so many different ways to go. I don't think it's inherently wrong to change your mind. We change our mind about things all the time. The question for me, the issue for me, it goes back to what Angelo said, is when he was talking about what does it mean to follow Jesus, or how do we understand Jesus? How do we understand the Christian faith? How do we understand what it means to hold on so tightly to something, and what is our motives behind holding on to that thing? I challenge, again, it goes to the politician and Christian thing. I challenge why he was holding that view in the first place. I'm not saying he doesn't believe in Jesus, but he had stake in the game for holding that view, right? He had political motivations for holding that view. Then when it became personal, he had to ask the question, okay, what matters more, political ambition or the relationship with my son? Frankly, I'm happy he made the right decision in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, that would mean me and my wife, we talk about that stuff, right? What would happen if, I hold to a traditional view of human sexuality and marriage personally. But what would I do if my son came out, right? Or my daughter came out, right? Can I hold that same view, but also love them at the same time? So a lot of the same-sex marriage stuff has been framed around, you can only have it one way. You can only do it one way. And sadly, I think when it comes to politics, it's become so politicized that I don't even know if that guy really did care at the end of the day. He's part of a group, he was part of a party that said, you either tote this line or you're out, frankly.
But I think it's relevant, the conversation we're having. I think everything you said is relevant.
It is relevant. Oh, it is relevant.
But I think you and Jason keep, we're moving the goalpost a little bit, but we're talking about being a Christian and being a politician. So if he believed what he was saying he believed, or if he never believed it, then he's a liar. What kind of a Christian is he? That the point, the question is not about changing your mind. It's fine to change your mind. It's human to change your mind, but we're talking about your beliefs. We're talking about the Bible.
A core value.
Well, to me, it wasn't so much even about belief. It was about what he did in doubling down and tripling down on his belief, right? Because you would mention how every sort of same-sex marriage legislation, every sort of which way, he doubled down on it, and then he backed off when it was his son, right? Right. So I do challenge the motives as to changing his mind in a sense, right? Because why all of a sudden now? To the other testimonies of the millions of people across the nation, that didn't change your mind. Why your son? Now, let me be clear. If that's true that his son changed his mind, I am happy to hear that he sided with his son over his politics. Like, I'm happy to hear that. But it's again, I'm going back to what I said before, is what is driving that understanding of truth? What is that driving that understanding of belief, right? I believe in Jesus. I love Jesus. I believe in the authority of the Bible. I believe in a lot of these things. But the way that I viewed those things has shifted drastically over the last, I've been following Jesus for 21 years. So over the last 21 years, things have shifted in certain regards. Does that mean that the things that I believed in before were a lie, or I was lying before? No. The way that I'm perceiving this reality is changing, is different. So I think as it regards to this politician, we're imposing a lot of presumptions upon him and what he's doing. I'm challenging, I'm taking what you said, I guess, Chaz, and I'm challenging the motive, the intention, the politicizing of the topic more than why he changed his mind. What was the reason behind his change? Because anything can change our mind.
Well, what's important, though, I think we need to look at the question again. What's important, though, John, is that can you be a politician and a Christian? The millions of young men whose lives was affected by his vote is what we're talking about. And him as a politician, he was an ineffective politician for the populace. And that's the point of my question.
Sure.
For whatever reason you're making choices on the front or back end, what kind of politician are you for 325 million people if you are making either bad choices up front or good choices in the back? You didn't do any good for any of these other kids. And that's always been my problem.
Then he was acting like a good politician. Well, I mean, that's just what it is, right? He's acting like a good politician.
Let's pass the question around. Do you have any? What do you think it matter? What about you, Gilo? What are you all thinking about this whole idea? Because I think it's a valid point. I think, and then we'll talk a little bit more about maybe what it means to be a Christian and some of the hypocrisy or whatever that we might see. So what are either of you all thinking right now?
Go ahead, Matt. I'll let you go first. I'll come after you.
Sure. Thank you. Hey, so
he's the senior Christian in here, so we're going to defer to you because you're the elder of the elders.
When it comes to when it comes to being a politician and being a Christian, whether it comes to being a firefighter and being a Christian, whether it comes to being a pastor and being a Christian, whether it comes to being a professor and being a Christian, whether it comes to being whatever and being a Christian, we always have to remember that Jesus never once said, "Follow my followers." He always said, "Follow me." And the reason he said that is because we are fallible. We are hypocritical. We're going to do stupid stuff, and we are going to fail other people. We're going to fail our wives. We're going to fail our kids. We're going to fail the people that people in our congregations. We're going to fail our students. We're going to fail everybody. But that has nothing to do with who Jesus is. And so we can't judge people on, well, I guess we can judge people on their hypocrisy. I mean, you could throw out names, I could throw out names, and we could talk about how they changed their point of view, once they got into office. But that's not the measure of being a Christian and being a politician. Being a Christian and being a politician is the person who is going to do their very best to uphold the teachings of Jesus. And being ethical, being moral, it's what I said before. Being truthful, not sleeping around. I mean, we're just following the 10 Commandments. Those are our mandates. And then at the same time, we're supposed to love God and love people. And so that's the key that we're looking for. Whether it's being a politician or being anything, we are gonna as people we're gonna fail other people. But you know what? There's grace and mercy for us through Christ.
What are you thinking, G-Lo?
I think he was a person. So speaking of the politician you're talking about, I think he was a person that honestly is a product of what we teach in the United States. Right? We know how to fake it. We know how to follow some basic steps to get rich. We know how to do whatever we need to do to get our power and get our influence in life, whether or not we believe it. You can follow a 10-step program, maybe not 10-step, whatever. You can follow a program or a formula to become a politician, to become managers, or go get your degree and do this and that to become an officer in the military and follow this track, do these things, and you'll get promoted and you'll be successful. I think this person knew that he can do certain things and toe these party lines and vote this way to be a successful politician without really thinking critically of himself or what he really believes about something. He may have said he was a Christian. Maybe he was. Maybe he believed that. But he knew that I do these things in my career because, that's what we push here, career. My career is going to thrive if I say and do these other things. And then when it hit home, like Jason said, when the water got hot, we saw what kind of tea he was made out of. Hopefully, he used that the authority and power that he did have to not only apologize to everyone who he shunned and everyone whose sons and daughters that he probably may have disrespected or whatever, and figured out how to fight for them, figured out how to apologize and maybe give them back something because of the pain that he may have caused them before. I would hope to have seen that. So I believe his Christianity was informed by his republicanism or by his party, by his job. I see that in pastors. I see that in people, kind of similar to what Matt said. You can be a Christian in anything. I see people who use their career or use a status or a power to inform their Christianity rather than allowing Jesus and their Christianity to inform the things that they do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think there's a real danger. I think there's a real danger when we cross those lines. And I think it happens more often than not. It's one of the biggest arguments that you hear in the world today. I mean, that's by far the biggest, at least for me, I mean, I don't know what everybody, I can't say the world because I don't know that many people, but at least the people that I deal with or whatever, the whole idea of like evangelicals that that back certain candidates, right? And you have to pick a side, and so don't be a Democrat, you don't be a Republican. Or you should Republicans are the Christians, and they're known that way. And I don't know. I think that might even be a bigger danger to identify that way, to let that decide what you're gonna do otherwise, right? So where I used to I was a Democrat for a while, and I think I became a Republican 10 years ago or something. I don't even know if I did or not, but I started thinking about that. And then I came back to being a Democrat. But where I'm at right now is like, I'm actually more of an independent. I don't agree with either party. I think they're both harmful to people, both parties solely. If you just pick one side, I think in a lot of respects, Democrats are too liberal. And I think, and then in some respects, I think Republicans are too conservative. There's so much nuance in that over there. That's just very simplistic. So I think what Christians may have to do eventually is actually pull out and become something separate. And I think all too often when we mix with the government, you're going to see a lot of those problems that Chaz talked about, especially when they talk about power, and the way you get power is through politics and money. One of the things I thought was really upsetting to me, and I'll throw this out there and then we'll answer a couple of questions from some folks here. But one of the things that I thought was really disturbing, and this is goes directly to Chaz's point about some of the hypocrisy in politics. Al Mohler, who's the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, arguably the largest Christian denomination in America, if I'm not mistaken, he in 2016 ran, or he didn't run, he spoke out against Trump and did not support Trump because of his lifestyle, because of all these things. And then all of a sudden in 2020, now he's saying, well, I am going to support him now. And even though like the things that he was upset about haven't changed, and some would argue that they've gotten worse. And so I think that when people see that kind of stuff, that goes right along with what you said, Chaz. Like, 3.5 years ago, or 4 years ago, you were opposed to all this stuff. Why all of a sudden now that stuff doesn't bother you? And I think that's the type of hypocrisy I think that bugs me. And it begs the question, what do you have to gain? What would force a Christian to go back on core values
on their belief,
period?
Not just your opinion, but of your belief.
Yes. And I think that that's what happens when a person solely chooses to be of a particular political affiliation. So
Jason?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This hasn't left my mind since Matt said it, and I just want to just make one quick comment to what he said regarding following Jesus as our example as Christians. And I just want to add that can get lost for some people because we are his examples here in the world. So yeah, we want to say follow Christ, but we're the ones that people see. So it's really important for us to do a really good job and be that right Christian example. I know you weren't dismissing that, but I just wanted to try to make that clear, if I could. Go ahead, Jason.
Can we just do this real quick then, because this is half of what John said too, and then we'll move on to the next question. I'll look through the comments and see, but John, if you will, like people are saying like we follow Jesus. How would Jesus address? I'll just let me pick one issue, something that's personal to me, and you could choose a different topic. But how would Jesus address the issue of the social justice, the social issues that we have in America, John? How would the Jesus of the Bible address those? What would his viewpoint be of what's going on? And you don't have to take a long answer. I know that's probably it might be a loaded question. I apologize.
Well, I actually don't, and it's funny because somebody on my personal thread wanted to bring it back to the gospel, and this is a gospel issue. Jesus's first sermon in the book of Luke in chapter 4, right, citing Isaiah, says that I came to liberate the oppressed, to bring healing to the blind, and so forth. I mean, that text in chapter 4 has socio-political as well as spiritual connotations to it. Was Jesus was helping the blind see just simply a way for them to see their personal sin? No, he was healing the blind. It was Jesus testified, and John the Baptist testifies later to that in the Gospel of Luke as well. Liberating the free, liberating the oppressed. I mean, these are physical, socio-political realities. This isn't just merely you're going to go to heaven when you die. So I think the social, you want to call it social justice, you want to call it justice, you want to call it whatever you want to do. The social implications of the gospel are very, very real. To tell people that they're going to hell or to heaven, but not to address the social realities of those who identify as the oppressed, I think is a very, very, it's a mistake at best, a poor reading of the Bible and the gospel at worst. So yeah, I think it's a gospel issue.
What do you think, Matt?
Well, it's something that I've shared with you before. Jesus' stated purpose is also in Luke, and I think it's Luke. It's either Luke 19 or Luke 21, where he says, "The Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost." That is the ultimate purpose, and so to try to mix that within with the social gospel, Jesus didn't come for that.
What we need to differentiate. Let me just say, we need to differentiate from the social gospel and social justice, though. Those are two different things. Just to be clear.
Let him finish his point though. So what are you saying?
Yeah. So Jesus came to seek and save that which was lost. While he was here, did he heal the blind? Yeah, absolutely. Did he heal the sick? Absolutely. But his sole purpose was to seek and save that which was lost, and so his sole purpose was evangelism, and so that's what I think.
Okay, what about you, Angelo?
I'm struggling, and let me pose a question back. Then, should we not? I mean, his social compassion was evident. So to say the purpose is to seek and save the lost, how did he do that? Wasn't he showing the social justice as he or while he was seeking and saving the lost? Would you say that or would you not say that, Matt? That's kind of the question, because I don't understand what you're saying when you said that.
Yeah, so he, in seeking and saving the lost, the miracles that he did were to draw people into him and to draw people unto him as Messiah. It wasn't political. It had everything to do with not going to hell and making it to heaven. That's why Jesus came.
Okay, so I don't see an issue with doing that then. So to me, I think that would be more reason for a believer to want to get involved in social issues and practice social justice, social compassion, if you would, to be that for other people and to show them what Christ showed the rest of us.
Yeah, well, that's what Ephesians talks about. Ephesians chapter 2 talks about we are His workmanship. We are created to do the works that He has put before us to do. And so, I think people have different causes that they follow. So some Christians are very pro-life. Some Christians are very pro-prison ministry. Some Christians are very pro-hospitality. Some Christians are very pro, hospital visits. Providing for the homeless, providing for the hungry. I think as it comes to that, and there's nothing wrong with any of those. Those are all good and noble pursuits. But it does come back to this is what God has called you to do. And God, there's no way for us to do everything. There's no way for us to be involved in every ministry that every church has. So I don't want to confuse the issue of because I think the original question was what would Jesus do with social justice, and so so I just don't want to confuse that.
Aren't we looking at it through the kaleidoscope? If he were a legislator, though, aren't we specifically saying if he were in a political office or in some sort of power to make policy or something? Isn't that what we're specifically talking about? Like, how would he approach it from that standpoint?
Well,
not as Jesus, but Jesus, the Senator.
No, because when Jesus says to follow me, like we follow him as he walked the earth, and he wasn't a politician. Like he wasn't.
Listen, I don't. Matthew, with all due respect, and again, I'm the non-believer here. When you make these blankets,
make sure
you make these statements, and you just when you just kind of put it on like this simplistic, for lack of a better term, dot dot dot. That's what Jesus was here for. Or you're simplifying things at a level where I don't feel like you're really answering the question. It's almost like you're like when people say, well, that's how God operates, and you just don't understand because you're a mere mortal. Are you really answering the question like with your opinion? Because we can all just say, well, the Bible says that, and that's it. But it would seem to me the problem is, and you just said it, everybody has their own this or their own that. Isn't there just one Bible? I don't understand how every Christian has so many different platforms to operate off of when there's just one Bible. And there's just one thing that it says. It's not the Constitution, it's the Bible. Aren't there Bible tenets? And aren't there things that just are? Isn't the word of God just that, not all over interpreted? I mean, it would just be that. Thou shalt this, thou shalt not that. So I'm kind of lost because I'm almost feeling like the way you're explaining it, you're giving room. If I ask you what you thought about the Catholic priests and all the child molestation and the subsequent church cover-up, you just say, well, you know, people aren't perfect and Christians sin, and like nobody has any threshold to uphold because we're all just imperfect. I just don't know. Are you answering the question genuinely?
Can I respond to Chaz real quick? First off, let me apologize to Matt. I interrupted him earlier and I shouldn't have done that. What I did say when he was speaking was the question was about social justice. He kept saying social gospel. Let's be clear, those are two very different things. Okay, social justice is advocating on the behalf of other people for their betterment, right? The social gospel was a theological construct born out of liberalism that had denied core aspects of the Christian faith and has been largely rejected by most Christians within the last 100 years, most Orthodox Christians. So I think those are two very different things, first of all. That's what I was interjecting on. But the second thing is, to what Chad says, what he says about the Bible, I think is a very important thing, but I don't know if we have the time to go down that road because there's so many spot webs to go down with that. But to get, I think, maybe at the heart of what you're saying, and where all of, at least the four of us would agree, is a core aspect of following Jesus is the term Jesus is Lord, right? We would all four of us affirm that statement, Jesus is Lord. But what we mean by Lord and how we interpret Lord, I think is where we're going to go in completely different ways. Lord is to say Jesus is Lord is to say that Caesar is not, right? That was a unbelievably political statement. Was he a politician running for office? Absolutely not. But was he garnishing and developing a better community to reveal a better humanity, which is what politics is seeking to do, right? A better way to be human in society, 150%, right? The culmination of the gospel in the new heaven and new earth is the fulfillment of that project. So to say that they're just simply going to heaven versus Jesus is in his incarnation, his presence among his people is working to develop a better humanity. Those are very different ways of interpreting that one statement, Jesus is Lord. And that's where a lot of us, I think, are going to diverge past. I mean, I'm looking at some of the comments. Some comments are going to affirm with, yeah, Jesus is just here to get us to heaven. Others are like, no, what about dealing with the suffering of humanity? What about these other aspects? I think that statement, Jesus is Lord, that's where we diverge. And I think it's important. And I think that is the problem ultimately.
Well, when we say those things, and I think a lot of that sounds really good, except for how does that play out? One of my harshest criticisms is, where is the church? Because certainly Jesus wouldn't be silent on issues of like prison reform. Jesus wouldn't walk past a prison full of people who were just incarcerated and just go, oh, hey, oh, well, fight for yourself. Hey, would you, you know what I mean? Like he addressed the actual needs of the people. He fed the hungry. Even if you think about when Jesus says, when he comes back, the Bible says when Jesus comes back, the way he's going to separate the sheep from the goats, he picked 4 very specific things. He said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was in prison, you came to visit me. And they go, well, when were you ever hungry, naked, thirsty, or in prison? He said, whenever you do it for the least of these, you've done it for me. And so I think for us to say, oh, Jesus only, I disagree with and Matt's not the only one that says that. That kind of goes along with there's a lot of believers who will say, just preach the gospel. And that's fine until the government says don't wear everybody has to wear masks and you can't go to church. Now it's not don't preach the gospel no more. Now it's like let's protest. You just preach the gospel then. Why don't we hey, wait a minute. We're talking about this issue of justice for humans that has nothing to do with us, that is actually really in line with how Jesus, if we look at like the rights of Christians, Jesus gave up the ultimate right of being God to become man. He gave that up to become a human, to become the lowest form of humanity, if you think about it. And so, and the call for us is to let this mind be in us that was also in him. But I think all too often we don't do that. We don't do that often enough. And I think it's really bad for us. I think that we say preach the gospel until it has something to do with one of our political positions. And then it's not preach the gospel, not, you know what I mean? So if you think about like, what do a lot of conservative evangelicals think of? One of the things conservatives think of is abortion. It's one of the issues, the issue of the sanctity of marriage. And then guns, when people would say would be one of the things that, Second Amendment stuff or whatever. So you think about like the top three things that are known as evangelical issues to ignore the rest of them though. And I think a lot of the hypocrisy that people see in the church is due. It makes sense. It's actually very unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that Christians have been aligned with the Republican Party, because even though there's some things that a person that identifies as Republican may not necessarily agree with, if we align the church with that particular movement, then everything that they do is a representation of the church. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's a huge mistake. And so anybody got anything else that they want to say at the conclusion of that?
Well, yeah, if I could. So being a Christian encompasses a lot of things. Whether it's social justice or, Chad's brought up, what about the priest and the little kids? Well, the Bible also says defend the defenseless and defend those that cannot defend themselves. So, there's a lot of issues that we take issue with, and it doesn't mean that we, when I was saying that Jesus's stated purpose was the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. That's the ultimate purpose. Okay. What I'm not saying is it stops there. Okay. And so there's a lot of things that we can do. The Bible says thou shalt not murder, that's one of our laws as well. And so, I just think that, when we say social justice, I think maybe we can, maybe it would have been easier to discuss it is if there was, a certain aspect, to break it down, as opposed to just the big blanket statement, social justice. Because as a conservative, I believe in social justice. I think people should. I think people that do wrong things should be punished. I don't think that there should be a two-tiered judicial system, a justice system here in the United States, nor in the world actually.
Yeah. So, and I think even in those things, I think there's a lot of ambiguity even in that particular statement, as it pertains to Christians. And I think one of the things, let me throw this out here. My buddy Tom Lemon, he says, what are thoughts on the Christian right supporting Trump? And I'm going to align that with the idea of, if we align ourselves to a particular, I guess what I'm saying is, would it make more sense? We're going to answer that question. And then the second part of that would be, would it make more sense for Christians to just be independent and be value voters? And what do each one of you think about Trump in general? Chaz. Stephen.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep
Stephen
calling him Chaz. He told us before we started to call him Stephen the Heathen.
Let me frame my answer like this. as we've spoken before, I don't think that there's much of a difference. There's been 45 presidents now?
Yeah.
I think there's been an aesthetic difference between 44 and 1, melanin difference, but I don't find him any different than any other president. Certainly since presidents were wealthy, since the time that presidents were coming, from royalty within the ranks. I find him probably detestable as a character, and I'll just be frank. I think Trump is such that only white folks could find Trump palatable. He's only palatable for white people. Now, we loved him in the 80s and the 90s when he was Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and, all that crap, gold toilets, that ugly Taj Mahal place that he built. But he's detestable. Just, I can't even look at him. He just hurts my eyes as a Black American. And to listen to him talk and, to hear his alleged thoughts on things, it's disgusting. But I don't think he's any different. I don't think he thinks much different than Joe Biden, George Bush Jr., Sr., Ronald Reagan, or Hoover. So that's my thoughts.
All right, John.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it goes without saying. I have no problem standing up as the 19% that unequivocally did not vote for him, as far as white evangelicals. And I agree with everything Chad said. He's an American imperialist, just like all the presidents that had come before him. Let's not mistaken. While some might have done better or different things for the moving forward of this as a nation, a lot of the things he isn't doing much different. My problem, though, is actually to the heart of Tom's question. Thoughts on the Christian right supporting Trump. I want to get the right out of there, because we knew the Christian right was going to support for Trump. That wasn't a surprise. But Christians supporting Trump, evangelical supporting Trump. The problem for me is really the lumping in of all evangelicals, and I understand it, because most evangelicals have typically voted Republican. So there was an assumption that was going to happen. Again, I'm making the same assumption. But then we're not even adding the right on anymore. It's just Christians. It's more just evangelicals. Nothing he does or says or said or did reflects anything related to following Jesus. This goes back to a lot of things that Matt said earlier that I find problematic. He listed a series of things that Christians are to do or supposed to do, and Trump has unequivocally been on the opposite side of all of those things. Yet conservative Christians or evangelicals will consistently find ways to still defend him and support him. My view is simply this. Has he done some good economic things? Sure. Has he pushed forward some legislation that's helpful? Absolutely. We don't have to. I don't have to dispute those things. But does that mean he's a Christian and he actually really cares about the church and the moving forward of the gospel and all those other things? Absolutely not. Right? We can see those things. He doesn't embody anything that a follower of Jesus should be seeking to follow. To be fair, no president has done that. Right? None. And so we latch on, and this is really at the heart of why there's no way I could be a Republican or a Democrat. I think it's ultimately hypocritical, because one way or another, you're going to sign yourself on to somebody's agenda that is harming to people and in a devaluing of the gospel. So that's a short, quick way of putting it for me.
Cool. Mateo.
I think he's been a fantastic president. I think some of the things that John said. Has he passed good economic policies? Absolutely. Has he signed prison reform? Absolutely. Has he saw a thing about a month ago and said he wants prayer back in schools? These are good things. And he has done a lot of good for this country. I think COVID has definitely undermined his presidency. But I don't think anybody would say he's a Christian. I've never.
He says it.
Well,
quite a bit.
Well,
he says it.
but even if he
He
says,
says he's a Christian.
but even if he says it, we have to be fruit inspectors, so let's follow the fruit. I know that if he is, and I'm not saying he is, but if he is, then he's a baby Christian. I mean, if he is, I mean, and I don't know what you guys were like, when you guys became Christians, but when I became a Christian, I was cursing and I was still doing a lot of crazy stuff, just because I was a baby Christian, but I don't do that stuff now. And so I've never, if a person says he's a Christian, it doesn't matter if he's a president of the United States or if he's a pastor. If he's a Christian, we are called to be, we're called to inspect the fruit that comes out of them. Jesus said good fruit cannot come out of a bad tree. And so
what about the pussy grabbing? I'm sorry, did I say that? What about the pussy grabbing?
It's a family show.
Well, I'm sorry. That was.
I'm kidding.
The president said that. What about that?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a tiny thing. Did that bother you character-wise? What about the character? Now, I would ask you to name the particular legislation, but I won't go that far. But I'm just wondering, is there anything to be said about his character as our leader, as the leader? Because legislation could be good or bad. It could be nominal. 50% of people might have thought it was good. 50% might think it's bad. Who knows? Maybe it was neither. It just was what it was, and things hit how they hit in different people's homes. But what about his character as a man, as far as we can tell? How do you sit with that?
So regarding the comment that you said, because I don't want to repeat it because my kids are around. Regarding the comment that you said, he apologized for that, and he manned up. He apologized for it. He said it was locker room talk, and we're as a nation we tend to be forgiving. So I'll leave it right there. As far as I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
That was it.
Oh,
I was wondering what you thought of his character as far as we could tell, just the things that we see. Like, do you find him to be, from what we can see, a man of character?
Now or then? Because then
ever.
No.
What about now?
Now he's shown himself to have more character now as president.
Okay.
Interesting. Gilo, did you have anything else, Matt, that you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
Angelo.
What was the original question before I go into Trump?
About that was it?
Tom Lemon. It was Tom Lemon.
Yeah, Tom Lemon.
I think he's a despicable human being. I have no love for that dude. I really don't understand how people support him. It's hard. It's hard to see that so many believers support him and excuse him and say that his behavior was this or was that. So that's really, really difficult for me. I've spoken to people who say it's policy over personality, and he's the Republican choice, so they vote Republican, so that's why they pick him. But that still leaves me sour. I think it's a cop-out, and he's a disgusting person. I don't even really want to say too much more about it. He's really a disgusting person, and it's a shame that that believers support that dude. It's a shame that anybody supports that dude, truthfully. So that's my 2 cents.
Cool. Well, one of the things I want to suggest for folks, because one of the things I think that's been really difficult, and for me, what's made it hard to kind of make my mind up to sit in a particular camp is we just never talked about politics much in the churches I was a part of. Like, I remember, there's always the typical every 2 to 4 years, you get politicians that come to the churches and make all these promises, and you know what I mean? And it's nothing more than that. I mean, you know what I mean? There's no, huh?
I call them lies. They don't even intend to keep those promises.
I mean, they're just utter and complete lies, and all pastors know that. You know what I mean? And you just see the integrity of a lot of pastors who allow these politicians to come in and stand in their pulpits and deface their pulpits or whatever and tell lies about what they're going to do, and they don't plan on doing any of it. They only do that to get the vote, particularly pandering to the black churches or whatever. That's particularly where you see a lot of this at, and I think that it's bad. But one of the things that I found that's been really neat for me, because here's the thing, I have some very conservative views when it comes to certain issues. I too I'm a traditionalist when it comes to marriage and all these and the other things as far as traditional Christian values. But one of the things that has changed over the years as I've grown is that I still see an immense amount of value in everybody, no matter what you believe or how you think or feel or how you identify, who you marry. Like for me, first and foremost, is I see people as image bearers, you know what I mean? And so it's like we can sit down and have a cup of coffee. And I was telling a friend today, my first question should never be who you're having sex with or whatever. I mean, that just would be inappropriate for any conversation, right? So that part doesn't really matter. Like, it's important for me as a Christian to get to know a person and find out what their name is and where were they born, and, like, you know what I mean? And I believe that everybody, because they're an image bearer, should have the opportunity for healthcare and to be able to take care of themselves and to eat and have shelter and to be treated fairly and to, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be accosted by the police, no matter what they believe or how, no matter what they do. So, and I think that, but then on the other end, I would be what's considered liberal, because I think that it's important that people eat. And so I agree with some programs that are social programs that if the government says that they're going to do certain things, then they should. So I agree that there are certain times when the government should step in. If people are paying taxes, what are you paying taxes for? What's the purpose? In our form of government here, we're a government for the people, by the people, and of the people. And so since we live here, and since this is, you know, I work and I pay into this system, I think that it's unfair that I don't, and I think our system is designed for me to be able to have a voice in how my tax money is spent. And it's a collective voice. And all too often, I think, and this is one of the problems, I think, and primarily in the church, I see it a lot. Everybody, there's a lot of people who say, yeah, look at the politicians only want to bring up race and all these other issues when it's time for politics, when it's time for the run for office. And I go, that's a lie. The only reason why people believe that is because you haven't been in the streets doing the work. Like, this conversation's been going on for a long time. I just talked to somebody today about the whole idea of the commercial sexual exploitation of children. This whole idea that somehow now children are more susceptible to being kidnapped because there's no mask. And I'm like, no, they were just as susceptible before when you didn't care and you wasn't looking for them. Like, it was even worse then. You know what I mean? So stop it. But the problem is, I think a lot of times evangelicals come out at a particular time and start speaking and condemning people. And it's like, my sister wrote some curriculum for the school district 15 or plus years ago that dealt with that very issue of child sex trafficking. And I know a ton of people that are doing work in that field consistently and have been for years. The problem is the church just doesn't know that, because we've been told that it's okay to only stick to the faithful three things that churches care about. So I think that the church is failing in some of the issues that we have termed liberal, and we say we shouldn't be into those things. And so I just would like to suggest, I found the middle of the, to me, a very that fits kind of something that really makes sense, and everybody could check it out if you want. It's called the AND Campaign. And I got a book, Justin Giboney. It's Justin Giboney, Michael Ware, and Chris Butler, Compassion and Conviction, the AND Campaign's Guide to Faithful Civic Engagement. And I think that, I think that that's important because it addresses a lot of the issues that we talk about, and may give a more, I think some people are either far to the right or far to the left. And I think that it's better for us to be kind of down the middle when we can. And maybe one day we'll be able to come back and discuss that a little more fully. Trying to think here.
Jason.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I interject one thing really quickly?
No.
In the Constitution, you all familiar with the separation of church and state, or the alleged separation of church and state? I'm wondering really quickly what you guys think.
It's not, that's not in the Constitution, by the way.
Well, I think it is, though.
That's not. It's part of the interpretation. It's the interpretation of the Establishment Clause. It's something that I think comes out of the Establishment Clause.
Okay, well, certainly the philosophy of separation of church and state.
The idea of that, one would say, comes from that.
So, in regards to this question, I was just wondering what you guys' thoughts were, and maybe that would speak to what Matthew was saying. Is there a separation of church or ideals or your own belief, Christianity, in your governing? Or is it possible? Is there a separation of church and state?
Well,
Should there be a separation?
No, there should not be a separated church and state. And actually the original where the term separation of church and state came from was really to keep the state out of church business. And so that it was never to keep the church out of state business. And right. so because of that, I don't think that there should be I don't think there should be the separation of church and state. I think that and this is the very first thing that we talked about earlier today about, can you be a Christian and be a politician? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can, there's been times in, I'm sure, I don't know if John or Angelo have served in businesses that were not ministries. I don't know, but I have. There was a time, actually just recently, where I served in a business that was not a ministry. And, I had to be the one, making moral, ethical decisions at the expense of being threatened to be fired almost weekly. I would be asked to do something, and I would say, no, I'm not going to do that. And they would say, well, why not? And I said, because it's not right. And I follow Jesus. I don't follow my CEO. And so, people would threaten me with my job, and, I never got fired, thank God. But there come times, and I think it's going to be the same thing with politics. We have to, if I'm a politician, I have to answer to God first, and then to constituents and things like that. So and I think that's possible. I think it's possible because I've done it.
One of the things, Chaz, and it's interesting, this book, Compassion and Conviction, one of the very first chapters, one of the things that they said, or not one of the very first, but the first chapter, it says, pertaining to being a Christian in politics, says, when we're in conflict in a decision, we should demonstrate that our public witness is more important than winning a political battle. This means that if our side has to do something unloving or corrupt to win, then it's better for us to lose in that situation. We once heard a Christian political activist and donor express despair to a friend about the fact that his candidate lost in a presidential election. He told his friend that the lesson he learned from the loss was that next time we just can't tell people what we actually want to do. And it says this is completely wrong. It's better to lose than to sacrifice our virtue for the sake of what is politically expedient, to defend leaders' harmful policies, or to condone immorality. It is better to lose that temporal battle. If our actions don't glorify God and serve as the salt and light of the world, then they are good for nothing. And I think that that's a good way to look at, that's a good kind of a view of what that looks like. And I think when we align ourselves with any party, one of the dangers that we align ourselves with when we line up with this world system, our government governs the world. I don't think anyone could make a compelling argument that America is inherently a Christian nation, nor have we ever been. We have not been. It's a deist nation. They believe, but the whole idea of America was that you could have whatever form of religion you wanted to have. So America's not Christian. And so for our government to overwhelmingly identify itself as Christians, especially hypocritically, I think is just disingenuous at least, and hypocritical at best. And so one of the things that I think it's important, the whole idea to separate the church and state is so that the state doesn't, one of the whole reasons for the establishment clause was to make sure government wasn't promoting any particular religion. That's the whole purpose. The government is not supposed to promote a particular religion. So to promote Christianity as a religion in America is actually against the Constitution. So we really shouldn't be doing that. And that's the problem. And I think that goes back to what we said in the beginning. You cannot have a strictly Christian, because then we can start looking at issues like the death penalty. And some people say we probably shouldn't have it or whatever. You look at the overwhelming examples of people of color, primarily Black people, overly represented in the prison system, overly represented in a lot of things. A lot of these statistics come out and we see a lot of people that Black people and people of color, Black and brown people, Asian Pacific Islanders, that are overwhelmingly represented in the prison system as it pertains to white people. And there's reasons why that happens. And I think it's those kinds of things that when people in the world look at statistics if that's what's guiding their compass, statistics that show that there's an overwhelming majority, and then the church doesn't say anything about it or takes a stand against something like that, I think that, especially when the church is lined up with a political party, I think that it does harm to our witness. And so I think we have to be very careful. So
if I can respond, I want to respond to what you said, and also kind of respond to a few things that Matt said earlier. And really, I would have probably, I voted largely Republican before 2012, because I just thought I had to. I just thought that's what you did, right? That's how I was, I would be indoctrinated, if you will. And I think everything that, one of the things, a large part of my and reconstruction of the Christian faith was the deconstructing of that sort of political ideology. So we affirm, well, I hope we affirm, I don't know if Matt affirms, but this country is never was a Christian nation. It's not a Christian nation. Just for fun, I got this little deal in front of me. The Treaty of Tripoli in 1797, Article 11, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Okay, so that should hopefully give us a little more comfort at night with that statement. But the problem with me identifying with the Republican Party and conservative ideology as I see it as a whole is it's not just voting for one party. It's not even just saying, hey, I think Trump is going to be the best person to lead this country moving forward. I know people that think that way, and they're not bad people. It's the throwing in ideologically, right? It's the complete giving over to that ideology, where as if I stop being that way, or I stop thinking or voting that way, then I lose everything, right? If I stop voting for X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to be a Christian anymore, right? If I vote for a Democratic candidate because I think it's a better person, that then means that I'm pro-choice. That then means that I hate babies, and that means I don't love Jesus, right? I'm paraphrasing the nonsense I hear related to that sort of ideology. And a lot of what so we say that, so Matt made the comment, prayer in schools, that's a great thing. For who? Because if we're not founded on the Christian nation and we're praying in schools, who are we praying to? We're praying to Jesus? Well, then that's at the behest of other people that don't believe in Jesus. So we're not really doing the best for this country in liberty moving forward. And is that really what Jesus had in mind, was for us to pray in public schools? Is that really what following Jesus is really all about? So when I go back to this idea of, if you're being a politician, can you be a politician or be a Christian? Again, you can't, you're going to fail at one in favor of the other, or right? Like you can't do both. You can't do both well. Let's put it that way. And if our Christology, which that means the way that we understand the person and work of Jesus, entails us to follow everything he is saying and doing, to me, that outweighs overwhelmingly the possibility that I would enact decisions or legislation that would harm other people. Because you said it earlier, Jason, right? Our anthropology as Christians is that all people are made in the image of God and have value, right? Insurmountable worth. I think all of us would agree with that at a fundamental level. So how could I participate giving my activity over to something, wholesale over to something that could potentially harm other people created in God's image, right? So when we're throwing in for, and this, again, this also goes to the left. They're not out of bounds. They're not off right here. But the overwhelmingly majority of the Christian community in this country goes to the right. And that's the problem, right? So we say abortion's bad. Okay, but we also ignore the fact that under a liberal president, abortion's gone down drastically, right? We say gay marriage is bad, but we will give unwaveringly support to bombing other nations, including innocent civilians, right? It's inconsistent. And so if we think a president is going to do something better for our country, and I want to check that box, that's one thing. But to throw all in and to try to justify and defend and holistically support, wholly support a person, to assume that they have the best intentions for whatever, I think is really, really, really foolish. It's very foolish of the church, and it's the church is not being the church. Stanley Hauerwas, theologian, has this great quote: the role of the church is to remind the world that it's the world. We are a distinct community, a distinct politic, if you will, that is trying to show the world a better way to live, but we're giving ourselves over we're prostituting ourselves over to the state, and it's harming and damaging our witness. I think that's ultimately the problem.
Well, I definitely, it's funny. Some of my friends were teasing me today, like, you're going to need more than an hour to have this conversation. I'm thinking, oh, we'll cruise through. This is going to be good. I knew that we probably would need to. There's so many different things that I think that, number one, I think
we got through one question.
If that, you know what I'm saying? But
we need an hour for each question.
but I think in all fairness to the, in a sense, we kind of talked about some of it, but not specifically. And what I would love to do, if y'all don't mind, I would love to pick this up again and answer the next two questions, because in another conversation, because I think it is important. The other two questions, just for those who are going to be watching, is one of the things is, what do we gain or lose by holding to our political perspectives? That what do we gain or lose by holding to our political views? And the other question is, why do we or should we care about politics? And so those are things that I think are important questions for us, because as a Christian, I think that it is important for us to follow it and to talk about these issues. But what does that look like? The goal of tonight for all of us too was to have civil dialogue, to have civil discourse, to say Christians as believers are on many ends of the spectrum as it pertains to God and what we believe, how we hold to those. As much as we believe that everyone is created in the image of God, I also believe that people who disagree with me are created in the image of God. You know what I'm saying? And so, and are worthy of respect and dignity. And I think Christians have to model, dialogue and what dialogue looks like amongst the brethren, whatever, the best way that we can. I know that these topics can be like heated, and many times they are. And I purposely didn't want to interject certain things in or whatever to try to not to hide something, but not to let the conversation go off to the right or to the left. We wanted to try to stick with some very particular points, so that we could make sure that the conversation kind of moved along and we weren't all over the place. I apologize for not getting to a whole lot of people's questions in the comment section. There are a ton of questions that people had. Super grateful for that. If you don't mind, let me go through a few of these, and if one stands out to you guys could answer it. We have about 8 minutes left. Let me go through some of these comments, and then we'll see. Lori said, I had someone tell me you're Christian, you should be Republican. I just don't get that at all from my perspective. And anybody can jump in if you want to. That's one comment.
I think John kind of touched on that earlier.
I sort of responded to that a little bit. I can clarify if I need to, but I don't.
Okay. Nancy Castro says, at the end of the day, people are going to have their own interpretations on their own beliefs and political views when it benefits themselves. I think that was said and sort of condemned, I think, in some ways too, right? I think that was something that was talked about too. Kenya Taylor, an example of, so Kenya Taylor ran for office, had a very successful, although didn't move on to the next round in her political race, ran for County Board of Supervisors, District Seat 2. She did really, really well. And so that's her view. Can you be a politician and Christian? Yes. And she talks about the golden rule. Do unto others as you've had them do unto you. I think that's a real safe way and a real good way to do it too, right? I mean, that's a good one. The question is if you are unbought, unbossed or not. And that, I think we talked about that too, right? The whole idea of money in politics and people being swayed based on money or something like that. So, and I'm sorry, Prissy was asking you, Chaz, what would be the conclusion according to Chaz? And that was your original question. So I don't even know if you remember what you asked.
I kind of do have a conclusion.
Okay.
It's a little lofty.
You want to wait till your last thing that you have to say? Would that be a closing statement for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Reason why there's a lot more non-denominational churches, more freedom to do what they want. In certain circles, I know in the Southern Baptist Convention, they have what's called autonomy. Churches are autonomous, that they hold to, I think it's a 1689 confession, the Baptist Confession. I can't remember what it's called. I don't remember. But
Southern Baptists don't hold to that.
It was 1689 something. What is it?
Reformed Baptists hold to the 1689 confession, but Southern Baptists don't hold to that.
Are you sure?
But autonomous church, but churches are autonomous in Southern Baptist. So you can be a Southern Baptist and hold to the Reformed confession.
But you have to agree to a specific set of values as a
yeah. I mean, there's core resolutions. There's core resolutions. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Sure. Prissy says, according to Matt, if Jesus' sole purpose, she meant to say sole focus rather. She corrected it in her next statement. If the sole focus was to save the lost, as if it was disconnected to societal issues, then Christians should not vote and participate in civic duty outside of paying taxes. She says that that's poor theology. Does anybody feel like we did not speak to that or want to say something to that? Or Matt, since it was directed towards you?
I think I answered that. I said the Bible's very clear that we're supposed to do a lot of things, including defend the defenseless, do not murder, things like that. So I think I covered that.
Okay. Gretel, Maestra, what's up, Maestra? She says, why are we associating religion or Jesus to any political party? If you do that, are you not supporting political agendas and not the work of humility?
Hey, something Gretel and I agree on.
Hey, just FYI, 2 weeks ago when we talked, Gretel was on John's helmet. Just so you know, yeah, I
don't know if she thinks that we agree, but I actually think we agree on that.
We've spoken sort of, and I absolutely. She just goes hard in the paint. Very passionate about what she believes. Did you get all that blood out of your clothes, John? Because he went after you.
I wear a black shirt today.
You're right. Yeah. She got with your program. Then Gretel says, why, if I get free will from religion, why do I not get free will politically? Can I follow my beliefs without imposing laws to follow my beliefs? What I think about that is I think what you believe is going to inform the laws that you create. I mean, you know what I mean? It just goes without saying, right? So you could say, well, that's the hypocrisy in what Chaz was talking about in the beginning. What you are going to impose on people is actually may not necessarily be what you believe, but that demonstrates what you believe. What you do says more about what you believe than what you say. You know what I mean?
So your son's gay.
Right. I know. Okay, Gretel, she said, are there women pastors? We have an all-male panel. Is there a reason why women can lead with God's word? Isn't that social justice? We are going to get to that. We'll get to that in another, not to, I know you
yes. Yes.
Listen.
They're in the kitchen.
Look.
I'm not even going to laugh at that one, but I love that question.
Hey, ladies, that is who said that. This man right here. He said that. Yeah, that was none of us. But I actually thought about this, Gretel, today, and I kind of was like, I wish that, and we will have a we'll talk about that. I need to do better. I'm very bad at planning these things. I just there are teachers that are Republicans that are told they are against God if they stay in our teachers union. Why are we aligning our religion to candidates or unions? And I kind of think that was
that was addressed.
The church rides hard for Trump, and I have heard them say that Trump truly has a heart of God. How can they be teachers of God's word and support a man of his character? I think Angelo. Well, I think everybody sort of spoke to this.
Listen, I'll just say this. You know what? Maybe he prays to Jesus at night. Maybe he does. I don't know. But his Jesus is really concerned about money and power. And that's the difference from the Jesus that we read in the Bible. I think that's so. Yeah, he might have, right? He mentioned he's mentioned Jesus a few times. That's absolutely the case. Everything he does and says is about power. We remember his pre-election question, right? Do you have to ask for forgiveness? What do I need to forgive? I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need forgiveness. Isn't that a core aspect of our gospel, right? Is a confession of faith. Is a repentance, is an open repentance. It's an easy. That's a softball, as a lob, right? But we'll give him a pass, right? Because he's going to put Supreme Court justices Like,
well, we got the China virus too, John. We got this China virus here. So that's.
I mean, it's absurd.
It's from China.
Not getting a pass for any of it.
But again, to be fair, Matt, he's not the only one. I think the church just needs to be consistent in recognizing that. So should Biden be elected, let's be consistent. He's an American imperialist, just like every other American president. Let's just be consistent with that.
What do you think? It sounded like you disagreed a little bit with that, Matt.
No, I just, I think that's a exaggeration. That Trump is just worried about money and power.
Based on what?
Based
on what?
I think he's worried about a lot more things. I think putting conservative justices, just like you said. I think he signed prison reform. I think he wants to protect the country by building a wall. Just there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that he's interested in. It's not
protect the country from Mexicans.
It's not just money and power. To protect the country from illegal aliens.
I mean,
so yeah. I think I want to. Are you guys? I want to have a conversation about. We're gonna turn it up on our next conversation. I want to talk about. I want to talk about some of those specific things. Then Lori says her church doesn't talk about politics. Let's see here.
That's a shame.
Then Greta, shouldn't all churches be independent voters and vote according to individual stances on all? Do you feel churches have been used for political agendas?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
But they benefit too.
Yeah.
Churches have willingly been used. They've willingly been used for political agenda. So that's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Greta says, thank you for addressing all my questions. I realized they were repetitive. I felt like I was preaching to the choir, no pun intended. Hey, well, one of the things we say at church, have you seen some of the way some of these choirs behave? So sometimes you got to preach to the choir. Don't ever apologize for that. So why don't we just do like kind of a final word? Chaz, I'll start with you and you guys can see the screen. I'm going in order of, so to be Chaz, John, Matt, and then you, Gilo. Chaz, why don't you give a final thought? And then we're going to come back and have, I want to get a little bit further into some of this stuff on our next conversation, if you guys don't mind. But Chaz, give us a final comment.
All right. I'm not going to cherry pick the issue, but I'm going to use the Senator Portman issue or example I brought up to kind of explain or to give context. If I'm a politician, if I'm a legislator,
yep,
I should be making decisions for my constituents, and in my belief, unlike what was said earlier, in the best interest of my constituents. So my constituents might be of all racial makeups, all religious persuasions, sexual persuasions. So I would be trying to make the best decision for the populace. Now, you can't please everybody. You can't even please everybody within a certain persuasion. But that's what I would be doing. And I don't think that I could do that solely being driven by my quote beliefs or core beliefs. This is why I think a Christian, a Muslim, anyone who had absolute belief would make a bad politician / legislator. I think that the role of a Christian or anybody who is a believer would be in their home, would be in their place of worship. So whatever is done from a political aspect would be something that would drive the country, drive society as a whole, and then laurels, morals, ethics, what have you, would be taught by religious leaders, belief leaders, what have you, again, in church and home. And I think that would be a more efficacible platform. That's all.
Thank you. John.
That word efficacible was for you again, Gilo. I don't even know what it means. Have you checked me?
It doesn't
Google
matter.
check me.
It sounds good, but who cares? Sounds good.
Yeah, I would just revisit a few things. Likewise, just revisit a few things I said earlier. Christianity is not merely a religion; it is a social politic. Saying Jesus is Lord is a public public declaration to allegiance of allegiance to Jesus, to following the teachings of Jesus all the way through. We have a few of us have thrown passages out there here and there, but this isn't cherry picking passages. This is taking the whole of the story about Jesus and throwing our entire life on that, on those teachings. And as it relates to politics, as it relates to whether we engage in politics, we have that privilege and that right as Americans. That's great. As being a politician, as being a legislator, as being one who has to represent their constituents, that is a whole different task, right? You are by your very nature going to make decisions that contrast your views of following Jesus. You have to. There's no way around it. Otherwise, as it was mentioned earlier, you would not be reelected and you would probably be recalled or removed from office. It's impossible. And so if the former is true, that following Jesus, calling Jesus Lord is a political statement, and that is to what we should base our lives on as followers of Jesus, then we have to take into serious question what other political allegiances we're going to give ourselves over to. So again, we may see a conservative ideology as just a better way of life, or it fits our way of life. All right, so be it, right? We might see voting liberal gonna fit that as well. So be it, that's all right. But when we throw our weight, our allegiance into a particular party and a particular camp, I think that is where we run into danger. That is where we run into problems. So again, it's really posing the question and honestly and diligently answering, what does it mean for Jesus to be Lord? That's it.
Cool. Thank you. Mateo, final thoughts, my brother.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to be a Christian and a politician. You just gotta be moral and ethical, and you gotta have character, like Chaz was saying. And so as a believer, I'm not gonna vote for a person just because there's an R next to their name. If they're not ethical, they're not moral, I won't vote for them. We had a presidential election it would have been 2012, and Romney, right? Romney, he had an R next to his name, and I did not vote for him. Sometimes you just have to sit out elections. I didn't vote for the other guy either. So
Who's the other guy?
Obama.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure you make you say his name.
Okay, all right, yeah, no. I didn't vote for him because we were talking about hypocritical stances earlier, and he changed his view on the sanctity of marriage. So I didn't vote for him either.
When he was at Rick Warren's church.
However, yeah. I remember when he was with Rick Warren, and when Rick Warren said, when does life begin? He said, that's above my pay grade. Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. So. As a conservative, my views align more with the Republican Party than with the Democratic Party, and so because of that makes me tend to lean towards more towards the Republican Party. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Cool.
And one last thing, and just as a reminder to all of us. Jesus never said, "Follow my followers." Jesus always said, "Follow me," and as followers, we need to do our best to reflect Him. But please know, we are going to fail, and because we are very fallible.
Yeah, which I think might be a good reason why pastors shouldn't make political statements, and that they know that their followers will follow them. If we don't want them to follow, as a pastor, you should keep your political views to yourself and let your constituents make their own decisions. If we truly believe that, we only believe that for certain things when it comes to making mistakes, I think, in my opinion. What were you saying, Gilo? Give your final thoughts.
Right on. I don't have any issue with churches talking about politics. As you said, and I think it's been said a couple of times already, everything about us is going to inform the things that we do, the things that we say, the decisions that we make. They should, at least. Sadly, a lot of churches and a lot of people just take what they're told to take, if you would, Christian vote Republican or not, right? And they run with that. I think that's sad. And I think if we had more people who decided to take a stand and really do what they understand Christ has called them to, then I think there might be a difference in what we see politically. I think we could see more parties. I would love to see more Christians involved in politics. I'd love to see more people who practice Islam involved in politics. I'd love to see more Buddhists involved in politics. I really despise that we try to separate politics from the things that we say drive our lives. If it really drives our lives, then it's going to drive how we vote. It's going to drive how we treat people and everything else about it, right? So in short, that's really just my final thought. Like let's really get in there and let people know that they can and should vote and do things based on what they know drives their heart. And hopefully the heart's been challenged. Like the senator you spoke of, Chaz, hopefully they've had a situation where it was their son and not just some ideal that they hear from somebody else or from the pulpit or from wherever else. Hopefully things are really affecting us so we can make real decisions that have conviction to them, right? And not just what we hear or what we want to pass on from what we've been told. So,
what's up? Wow, good stuff. Well, I just want to say, I'm very grateful. Thank you to each one of you. Gilo, appreciate your time. Mateo, thank you, man, for coming in. Big John, appreciate you, bro. And of course, my main man, Chaz, appreciate you. Thank you all for and those of you who came in and pulled up. Just want to say thank you to Gretel and Lori and Sammy. And Sammy asked some questions, and Gretel just asked some things that will take us on a 2-hour conversation. So we will get back to those questions. To Tracy, what's up, Tracy? Thanks for joining tonight. My relative Joe Banks, what's up, Joe? Prissy, I think I said Kenya, thank you for coming. Nancy Castro, thank you. Tom Lemon, appreciate you. Thanks for pulling up. I'm sorry if I missed anybody. I just tried to scroll through the comments, but thank you all for taking.
Hey, I want to give on my feed. I want to give a shout out to Jackie, my friend Jackie. She's been chiming in, making comments, responding to you guys as well. So I want to say thank you to her as well.
And just on that note, great. Jackie. Hopefully, eventually, we can maybe instruct everybody to maybe come to my page. That way, I tagged you too late. I tagged you all after we started, so who knows, but so that we could put her stuff up into our comments here. But thank you everybody for watching. Those of you who
John got to. I just want to say thank you to my mama. Thank you to everybody who supported me along the way. I appreciate it. Blessings.
And you gotta have your big gold cross on there, bro, and you gotta give a shout out to God and
we appreciate you, Jesus. Thank you, dying for me.
Yeah, pull out your Jesus piece, bro, so we can see what's happening.
Gilo, you didn't say much during the show, but your final thought, I promise you, I almost said amen. So, for what it's worth.
The quickening of my spirit just now. Hold on, brother.
Doesn't take a lot.
So I just want to say thank you to everybody that pulled up, that will pull up and see this. We appreciate it. This conversation is huge. To think that we're going to solve these problems in one time is ridiculous at best. I mean, there's no way. This is a very deep issue. There's a lot that goes into this, and so this was supposed to be just I feel like we made some progress, but obviously we got a lot more to go. So some people are calling for a 3-part series, so we might have to come back for 2 more rounds. I hope that you all will be willing to do it. Whoever's not will continue on the show without, because I think this conversation is worth having. Regardless, I think it's important. I think that the people need to know. I think people want answers from the church, though we don't represent all Christians. We do represent some Christians. The people that are watching are people that watch our Christian walk. People, you know what I mean? And so maybe what we say means something to them. So again, thank you all for joining. We really, really appreciate you. To Gilo, to Matt, and to John, we'll disconnect. Chaz, we'll hang out for another few minutes to close out. And but thank you all for being a part of this. We appreciate y'all. Anything else before we cut y'all loose? All right. Take care.
And see you guys next week.
So what'd you think, bro?
I didn't know what to think before the show, but I mean, it's deep, man. You know what I'm saying? There's no right or wrong. There's almost no end. You could go to the ends of the earth with what ifs and with I can't even. I'm speechless. We took an hour and 30 minutes for one question, and we probably still could have gone another hour and 30 minutes.
Right.
On that question.
Yeah. And we're still live, just so you know.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Yeah, but
you know what happened last time we had.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. It almost makes me really, really resolve that I don't believe in anything particularly.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a horse in the race that I have to turn my back on periodically. Which is part of my fear of conviction, of belief, of faith. Because I can change my mind, but my belief, or I should say my opinion, is fairly frivolous, right? As it were. Yeah. So I'm afraid of claiming that I have a conviction in something and then abandoning my belief for success, for marriage, for safety. I don't know. I really think that the hypocrisy that it breeds, that is underlined in that moment, gives for people like me more or less incentive, right? It lowers the incentive for me to believe or to try to believe in God or what have you. So I don't know. I can really say that, and I'm not insinuating this is a case, but that after the show, if I watched the show as somebody who didn't believe, I would certainly not be moved to become a Christian by having watched this.
Yeah. Why do you say that? That's a very good observation.
I would just be more confused. I would, if I were a thinking person, I would be more. What's the word I'm looking for? Confused. Certainly. I mean, I would be way more. If I were trying to find something to believe in, if I were trying to find something to hang my hat on as far as a system or a platform by which I live my life of choices or viewpoints or morals, after this, I would be even more compelled to keep searching, because what I kind of gleaned from a lot that was said was that you just kind of enter it, and then you throw your hands up sometimes, and it's fine, it's okay, and it's not okay. How can it be okay if you enter on a platform or a belief system like Christianity? And let me say this: I was talking to someone earlier, and with exception to maybe county magistrates or some local politicians, I don't think you're going to find one national politician who is not a Christian, right? Not a professed Christian. And my question would be, are we to believe that all of these senators, congresspeople, presidential candidates are Christians? So I would assume they're not. But the fact that the game says that they have to be that is scary to me in itself, right? The fact that they feel like they have to be aligned with that.
Well, I would even say the fact that they feel comfortable doing it is really, to me, I think, especially some of the shenanigans you see in politics, the fact that a person feels comfortable aligning themselves and being able to do that for long periods of time without being kicked out, I think is an
indictment of society.
It's an indictment of the church, for the church to align themselves with folks that way. That's what I think. So that's good stuff, man. And yeah, that's a very good observation. And so, and we'll follow up with that, because I'd love to. I think part of me says, it's good that people don't necessarily see a political reason to become a Christian, but at the same time, I think it's bad. I think that there should be at least for me, I feel a particular way. I try to I don't want to push. I really just want to facilitate a conversation or whatever. Let other people, most people that follow me on Facebook know how I feel about stuff anyway, but I want to bring different views. And I think even within our beliefs, and Angela's saying he wants to answer that he wants to answer the question that Gretel posed about LGBTQ plus marriages. So are you all against them? And we'll answer that on another. We'll talk about specific issues on another particular program. But so anyway, man, well, that's good. I just wanted to get your feedback. I value what you say. We talk all the time about everything, so I just appreciate the way you view stuff. Yeah, I can think of 55 things that are that you say and do that are unbelievable, and I it's just no telling, man. I was wondering how you were going to show up tonight. You remember last time when we were interviewing the white man, you showed up with a suit jacket on, and tonight you showed up with yeah.
I almost came with my shirt off, a mask, a face mask, and some glasses. I was this close.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, you showing up with some preachers, you gonna show up with your suit coat on again. I didn't know how you were gonna do that. Last time you showed up with a suit coat on. So, but I appreciate you, man. Good looking out, bro. As always, man. A lot of love for you. I mean, man, this is just one of many. We'll talk more for sure.
No doubt. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right, bro. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for staying. We appreciate you guys. Love you. Thanks for pulling up. We want to discuss more stuff. We want to have more of you on the show. So if you're watching this and you want to come on and talk about something, we want to have people on to just talk about various stuff. Like, that's the whole purpose of pulling up. There's really no agenda. We just like people. We like to know people. We want to hear what they think, why, or whatever, and challenge beliefs. We want to argue. We want to make jokes. So we'd love to have a more diverse audience. So with that being said, thank you all for joining again. We appreciate you guys. Take care. God bless.